old fiddlers from the region who are now long since passed and gone, most of them. But we wanted to make sure we keep the tunes alive. Besides, our group and a few others out there, including the Minnesota State Fiddle Association now. There's not too many people playing this old tunes that used to be played in the upper Midwest. Some of them go back to, their native countries, and some of them we don't know, and some of them we know definitely don't. Were made up here a long time ago in the late 1800s, early 1900s, stuff like that. So so that's kind of the short story in a nutshell of long years of research and wandering around the upper Midwest, chasing down leads on old fiddlers and old tunes and getting people's old cassettes out of barns and all this kind of stuff that we've had to do to try to collect this stuff. Of course, I'll mention that the great reservoir of our music is at the Mills Music Library in Madison, Wisconsin, and the Center for the Upper Midwest Music. Please help me with the full name of that. Mary Pat, do you know the full name of that place?
I think
Center for the Study of Upper Midwestern Music. It's culture. Center for the Study of Upper Midwestern Culture.
Yeah, you got me. Yeah, you got the gist.
And but it's out of the Great Mills Music Library. Now you can go to the archives there and you can look up a lot of these old fiddlers. They have the tapes of them all in there. If you have the time and the willingness to go sort through a bunch of digital files at the University of Wisconsin site. Other than that, these tunes come from just the personal archives that I've collected over the years. Somebody will say, "Oh, my grandpa used to play fiddle, and my grandpa's buddies played fiddle, or whatever," and then we'd end up tracking down the old tapes from those sources. So, in a nutshell, that's kind of what we do at the Upper Midwest Folk Fiddlers. We preserve those tunes and we try to rebirth them and give them new life in a current setting so they're played here. So that's we have a learners group that meets in St. Paul every Tuesday right now from 6 to 7:30 at Edgecombe Park Rec Center. Any of you are welcome to join us if you're ever in town, if you're from Madison or whatever, or if you're just in town in general. Come visit us. Right now it's every week at the Edgecombe Rec Center, like I said, on Tuesday from 6 to 7:30. And we just run through these tunes. There's 137 tunes that we have in this tune book, the Upper Midwest Folk Fiddlers Tune Book #1. And right now we're just rotating through those tunes. That's kind of how we run our jams, is we'll just call out a number. I numbered them because they all barely had names, but a lot of these tunes are named Herbert Erickson's polka #1. Well, maybe Herbert Erickson had 15 polkas or whatever, and it's not a suitable name. So what we did is we took a little bit from the concertina fellows playbook here in town, and we decided to number them all so that we could have a chance and heck of remembering all these tunes. And I think that's one of the reasons we've talked about it. That's one of the reasons why these tunes weren't preserved as well as Appalachian tunes were. One of the reasons, many reasons, was that they weren't named. A lot of these people didn't have names. When I was doing Stoltman, Hillary Stoltman and Walter Stoltman's tunes from Northwest Minnesota, I was having a devil of a time, because even when I was talking with Hillary, he couldn't name a single tune, maybe 3 tunes out of the 100 tunes that him and his dad played. So it made it a challenge to go through and, actually archive this man's work. So I'm sure that's kind of one of the things that was met with when people were having trouble. But I'm not going to dive too far down a rabbit hole. Does anybody have any questions of anything else I need to fill in before we start? Any questions from the gallery? Don't be shy. Raise your hand if you want to ask your question. Mary Pat will unmute you. All right. Well, we'll just get right into it then. First of all, what I didn't do last time, and I would be remiss in doing, is I'm going to have all the Upper Midwest Folk Fiddlers who are on this recording. They are going to introduce themselves. So, hey, Howard's here. I see Howard. So yeah, so hopefully this will work out and Mary Pat can introduce the band here.
Hi, I'm Carrie Bowser.
I am Susan Karpowitz.
Hello, I'm Nick Rouse from Burnsville.
Eric Platt from St. Paul.
Howard Ornstein.
Rachel Switzer from beautiful St. Paul.
So that was we went right into a tune there.
Sorry,
Luckily,
sorry
people
about that.
luckily people picked up their fiddles and played along.
Yeah,
And that
right.
was Cuckoo's Polka from Elmo Wick, and that comes from that old the book that is called the little book that he put out. Maybe Beth Ratto, I don't know if she's here today, but Beth showed us this little book called that Elmo self-published called like Scandinavian music of Minnesota fiddlers or something like that. But it was just a mimeograph little thing that he put out with a bunch of tunes in it. And yeah, now of course the Minnesota State Fiddle Association, of course, has done such a great job at preserving Elmo's music in both the volume 1 that they put out as actual book, and then volume 2 that is kind of an online project and stuff. And I'm sure that all of you have seen that because you're all members of the Minnesota State Fiddle Association, right? So, yep. So that's one of those tunes. And I don't know, did Cuckoo Polka, Mary Pat, did it make volume 1?
No, it didn't. I'd have to look to see if we have it in his stuff. We're in the next process we're doing is we have all of his original manuscripts. So our next project that we're just getting started on is to scan all of his original stuff and make them available to everybody. So anybody who wants to look at the actual source of his stuff, in his handwritten notes and kind of how he saw these tunes, should be able to have access to those. So it'll take us a little bit to get that all done, but we do have a volunteer willing to work on that, and so she's ready, she's raring to go. So we just got to kind of go through my whole big case of books. It's really literally it's a case, a file box just crammed, as heavy as you could lift it, full of handwritten sheets of music by Elmo Wick. So it'll be a bit of a project, but it'll be fun.
Yeah, I mean that mimeograph book that I worked from is like 100 tunes tops, but you have like 6,000 tunes or something.
Yeah, we got them all. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In
Yeah.
that box. So I think mostly he concentrated on the music from his family and close friends in that little mimeograph book. But yeah, I think he did a little bit of everything in that, over the course of his lifetime or whatever.
Sure.
And you guys got that all. So that's great. And what else do I want to say about that? Well, no, that's good enough for now. So but it's great that the Fiddle Association has done this fine work, and it's good to know that there's all of us are out here kind of doing our own thing. Like I do my own thing as far as research go, and then the Fiddle Association does its own thing as far as its research and promotion of this old music goes. And someday maybe we'll all come together and we'll be one big happy family of preservers and promoters of this great old music that is lost.
Well, this is a really good start
is one
here.
Way to do it, huh?
Right.
Exactly. And I'm so appreciative
so
that we're doing this. So great. Anyways, let's move on now, and we're gonna go to the Leonard Finseth's Drammen Schottische. And I wanted to mention that we're in the key of A for the rest of today. We concentrated in the book on the key of G, D, and A, and that reason for that concentration is because we wanted diatonic players of button bots. All these tunes used to be played on button bots, and including Leonard here. It was his first instrument was the button bots, but they're only in certain keys, So we've concentrated this book on the key of G, D, and A. And I'll mention that if you're looking at our sheet music, there is tab, but all of the tab is in cross tuning, which is A, which is what I play these A tunes out of to add the drone back into this music that was at one time very, very drone heavy. But of course, none of my other upper Midwest folk fiddlers play out of this cross tuning. They all choose to play out of regular standard tuning, I think, just to keep it simpler for everybody. So if you see the tab, you'll notice that it's in cross tuning, but feel free to play it out of just regular old standard tuning for sure, like most of the fiddlers in our group does. So now coming up here is Drammen Schottische from Leonard Finseth here. So you can cue that up, Mary Pat. So, Drammen Schottische, and I should have mentioned that, of course, a Schottish is to be played with a lot of lilt. When we first got started playing these Schottisches, we played them kind of like reels or polkas, like super fast without any lilt at all. And now we've learned our lesson, and we slowed them down to the appropriate speed, and made sure and they have lots of lilt in the tune. So.
I did have one comment, a very positive one. So I was noticing in the transcription, when I was kind of playing through, I was noticing there's like a lot of whole notes and half notes. And I kind of intuitively just split the notes. And when I was listening to the group playing, that's exactly what they're doing, because that's kind of what I hear. So when you see the transcription, that's just telling you this is how long this note it's a repeated, but I was
Right.
hearing them, which is really cool, that kind of square dancey. You don't just play 1, 2, 3, 4 with your bow.
Right.
It's like 1, 2, 3. And I mean, they were doing kind of their, little splitting it up and making sure that the beat kept going for the dancers. I really like that. So I think that's an important thing. If people listen back to this recording, kind of listen to how the fiddlers were really just keeping that beat so that the dancers always knew, where they were at. So I really like that. That's very cool.
Good point, that the transitions are more like a loosely based thing. They're not really like I consider all transcriptions to be. They're not really the basis of the playing. You really have to hear the playing in order to fully. That's some of the problem with the Elma Witch stuff, is that there's no actual recordings of some of those tunes, and so you kind of have to make the transcriptions come alive. Like somebody said to me, transcriptions are only as good as the musician playing them. They really have to come alive from a band, and we have one certain way of doing it, and some of which I can tell you has developed since the book. There's a few things that we've done that do now that aren't in the book, that we just kind of have. That's the way music should be, living, breathing. None of these tunes will be the same in 100 years. That's part of the tradition, is that the tradition changes. Do we have any questions from anyone out in the public yet for me before we keep going? I always want to make sure I'm not leaving people behind. Everybody fine, and everybody playing along fine with the music at home and everything? We got a lot of people out there. Okay, well, I'll just continue on then. If you got a question, please just, intercede, raise your hand. Mary Pat will unmute you. Okay, so next up, we're going to go to, I think there's going to be A8 in the book for those of you who have the book. And for those of you who just have the sheet music, I think it's just the next song in your sheet music. And it's going to be Ingvald Syverson's Waltz. Ingvald Syverson was in this little area, which is outside of Mondovi, Wisconsin, maybe 15 minutes north of there. It's just a small little hilly, it's not really a town, even though it's called Drammen Township. There's no really town there. It's just a hilly farming community there in the Driftless region. There was a bunch of different fiddlers who migrated there, and fiddlers' families. These are multi-generational fiddlers, who grandpas played and all this kind of stuff, in some cases grandmas. And one of these fellows was named Ingvald Syverson, and I guess at a young age he took Leonard Finseth in under his wings, and Ingvald played for a lot of dances in the whole area there. I mean, they would play dances, 30, 40 minutes away or whatever, and he took him under his wing. And first, Finseth learned the guitar first to play in the dance band. And then he ended up playing a little bit of button bots, okay, I've seen him with the button bots, but I've never heard a single recording of him playing the button bots, which would be so much fun to hear. But and then eventually he became, a full-time fiddler in Ingvald's dance band. And they also played with his other mentor. Leonard had two mentors, this Ingvald Syverson character, and then his uncle Ed Quall. So eventually they had a band that played around the area and stuff. So anyways, this is one of Ingvald's tunes. It's called the Ingvald Syverson's Waltz in the key A.
One, two, three, 1, 2.
All right. So that was Ingvald's waltz. I should mention that some of these waltzes have a fair amount of lilt to them. That's one that you can play with a lot of like upper Midwestern lilt if you want to. Usually if you're doing a really lilt it and it becomes, on the 1 and the 3 beat, it can become a mazurka, but just those regular waltzes should be played with a lot of lilt too. In my mind, if I was playing, I'm not on this recording because I was busy making sure we were getting the tapes right and filming and stuff like that. But if I was playing, you probably would even heard a little bit more lilt because I really like to add a lot of lilt to that tune. So that's at your discretion at home. Are these people with their hands up? Do they have questions? Yeah, I
Yep,
see
looks like
people.
it. Go ahead. We've got Teresa and Madeline have questions. You want to start with Teresa?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, thank you. These are really fun tunes, and I I see in the book that I downloaded have from you, you're not attempting bowing markings or anything like that, which I appreciate. Or do you have a word about bowings, or maybe you said that in the first class, which I missed?
And I can't remember if I talked about bowings or not,
Okay,
but
okay.
basically what 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 the deal is up here is that you get to it however you get to it.
Okay.
There was no like actual, there's no like what we, not like in Appalachia, there's no actual upper Midwest bowing patterns that we have. It's
Okay.
like if Beth Rado, of course, studied at the knee to knee with some of these folks. So like she has Bill Sherburne's bowing patterns down and how he bowed, and stuff like that. But a lot of these guys, even on the recordings, most of these fellers say, get it how you get it. They even talk about that. Like there was no one to show me how to bow. I just learned how to bow. So in that spirit is why we left that just
Okay.
kind of wide open.
All
I
right.
have my way of doing it that I kind of show in the thing, but my way isn't the definitive way. It's just one way of going about doing it. Sometimes we use a lot of double bowing, sometimes we don't. And I always liked a lot of drones. So, I always like it when people use double stops. None of the double stops are included on the in the tab,
Mhm.
but of course you can figure out for yourself where the double stops are and stuff like that.
Okay,
So,
thank
did
you.
that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, and we have a question from Madeline.
Okay.
Madeline, you can unmute yourself. Got to unmute yourself, Madeline. There you
Okay,
go.
Hey,
this
yay.
is a mundane question, but I'm struggling with my technology here. Mike, could you announce the next tune you're going to play before you comment on the last one, because I'm having problems finding where we're going. So if
Oh,
you
you
could
have
give
okay.
a little
You
more
working out of the book
notice
there?
for the next one, that would be great. Yeah, I downloaded it, but I don't have it in paper, so that would be really helpful. Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else have any questions here? Or comments or concerns?
I guess,
Nice.
Charlotte.
on Teresa's question, if you're playing like as a group and say you're at a, you decide to get together at a farm market or something, do you worry about those bowings or not really?
No.
I mean,
No.
is that,
I'm
if
not.
you get too hung up on it, you might be considered a classical player. No, I don't know,
Yeah, we don't sweat that. We do talk about it because sometimes like some passages we want to be precise. So we'll talk about it as a group as to what it is, but really it's not something that's important to the upper Midwest tradition. Like if I was down in Appalachia and I was playing Kentucky music, it would really be important to the tradition. Up here, what we have left of the tradition, it's not as important. So I say everybody fire away as you will. So
Okay.
So Ida had a question. She wanted to know about your fiddle, Mike. She wanted to know if that was a fretted instrument.
yeah, because I'm only down to 2 fingers now. If some of you know, I played clawhammer for a long time, and that these 2 fingers stopped working. So in order for me to move around fairly efficiently, I put on these cheater frets on this instrument that I have, this old beater instrument that I have. So yeah, works for me. So what else do we got out there? Anything else?
Any more questions before we move on to the next one?
Okay, so for that
Fire away.
for that friend who asked, this is going to be A10, which is Waltz from Ed Quall. So it's 2 more tunes. Last one we did was A8. This one's going to be A10. And a lot in this book we did the tradition of a lot of Minnesota's fiddlers ran through waltzes. You know how you normally go in a tune, you go A B B. A lot of these fiddlers ran through their waltzes, for one thing, fast, of course. The upper Midwestern Scandinavian waltz is like 30 BPMs faster than a German waltz that we know, or a slow waltz, So that's one thing to note. And the other thing about them is that a lot of them played, instead of going A B B, they just went A B. And I really learned to love that. So I did like use that a lot in this book, just the A part of the waltz and the B part of the waltz. And then you'd probably repeat that 4 or 5 times instead of the 2 or 3 if you were going to play the whole thing. Because, in my book, some of those waltzes get so boring when you go A, B, B, and they're slow. Oh, I'm just like falling asleep or whatever. So anyways, know that. But this one is A, B, B. So this is one of the few in the book that actually does repeat that. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves in the upper Midwest folk fiddlers that, yep, this is actually the long version of the waltz there. So here we go.
One, two.
I really like that tune. That tune has really drove on me. It's got like just the right kind of lilt and the right kind of vibe to it. Yeah, I should also say that again.
It's a sweet tune.
Sweet tune, exactly. Sweet tune from a man in Wales, exactly correct. Yeah, that tune. I wanted to mention that the group, I could hear it in that playing that we kind of let everybody because especially in Nordic traditions, there's a lot of what you call second fiddling, especially in Swedish traditions. There's a lot of second fiddling, but even in Norway there is too. And mostly upper Midwest music doesn't have that, but we definitely allow our fiddlers, and you can hear it in that tune. Some of our fiddlers just dedicate themselves to that harmony fiddling in there, and we don't have that written down or anything like that. It's just what people choose to do. And you also hear, like, especially in this recording, you can see that we have everything from people who've been there from 2 months to people who've been there 5 years or whatever. So we kind of, that's the spirit of which that we have our group, and that's the spirit of which I want this music to go forward in the upper Midwest. Is everybody's welcome at the table, and that we even though we play dances and we play, Mary Pat asked us to play the state fair and stuff like that, even though we do stuff like that, it's a learners group. We're not a band, we're a learners group, and everyone always welcome, of course, no matter what skill level you're at. You might even end up on a recording at some point, so but you can always say no. So anywho, next we're going to go to Schottish. Sorry, friend, I didn't say the number before I talked, but A11 Schottish, it's the next one, so you won't have trouble. You can just go down one in your book there to A11 Schottish. And I really don't have a lot to say about the Schottish, except that it's one of my favorite Schottishes, because it sounds just a little bit different than all the other Schottishes in the collection. It almost reminds me of like a more of a Southern style. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's a good Schottish. So. Yeah. So I think what I meant by more southern is I'm used to those type of schottisches being played by like Missouri fiddlers. It just has that more southern United States feel, like Midwestern feel instead of upper Midwestern feel. I think that's what I was trying to say. Next tune is A13, and it's going to be the Waltz from Hardanger. So if you're in the book, that was A11, going up to A13. This one we know now. We Waltz from Hardanger, obviously Hardanger, Norway, and we knew that this one does go back to Norway, but we never heard anybody else play it besides Leonard Finseth, and now we know that a bunch of other people play it, including now we know the Hardanger Fiddle Association of America has it in their materials too. Of course, played in a very Hardanger way, where this is very Midwestern way. So yeah. So we're gonna do this tune, and this tune, I think it's in the book. I think it even says it's in the book. This is like my favorite waltz. A good 3-part waltz. And for those following along at home, it's AABBCC. So 3-part waltz coming up here.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Of course, we have the rule that if anything ever changes keys, we come back and we end on the A part. If the tune changes keys, which is a common thing in a lot of music, but also up here. Anybody else with any questions right now before we move on? Are we all good? I like the little hand raising thing. I don't know how to do it, but it was cool. So anybody else with anything?
I had just wanted to comment that you had mentioned that this was probably a tune from Norway, and I think you're absolutely right. One of the things that Bruce Bulleroyd put in his book, in the Ufta House Party Dance, but at any rate, he said that you could kind of tell if it was a traditional tune if it had more than 2 parts. The tunes that were in the upper Midwest were the ones that had 2 parts, and his logic was that the people who were playing when they got to Wisconsin and Minnesota, were remembering the tunes as best they could. And 2 parts is about as much as they could remember. If it was more than 2 parts, then it was probably something that actually had been written or recorded, or somehow people could remember all, because it was just too hard to, especially if you're in the field all summer, you pull out your instrument in the winter, you're not playing this music all year round. So, he said it was just too hard to remember it. So he said the tradition that evolved was 2-part tunes. So 2-part tunes would be Upper Midwest, and anything that's more than 2-part, more likely is a traditional tune that came from the old country.
You don't think they were bringing back like 4-part quadrilles or anything like that?
Exactly. No one could remember. You just couldn't remember.
I think that's a good folk story. Probably isn't the rule, but a good folk story.
You know what?
Sure.
You know what? According to Bruce. So you take it for
Bruce, man.
For whatever you take.
The world according to Bruce. If anybody hasn't ever looked up Bruce Bolerud, the Mills Library now has the Bruce Bolerud collection up, I think, of all of his old tapes of all of his old family friends and stuff that he has, and you can go through that. And of course, their band, we'd be remiss in saying that their band was called the Goose Island Ramblers, and they were kind of like the only real big export of upper Midwest music besides polka music, besides German polka music. The really big upper Midwest export of basically like Norwegian upper Midwest American music that we had really in the from the 50s to the 90s, or whenever they were the most popular. But folks down in Appalachia listened to the Goose Island Ramblers. So that's what's interesting. And they did all kinds of stuff, in true upper Midwest there was during that time from the 30s to the 90s, these bands did a weird mix of like German polka music, Scandinavian music, country music, and then like some Scandinavian funny songs, like the ones where they fake their Norwegian or whatever and they sing about funny stuff. They did a mix of this stuff, and then they'd throw in tangos and all kinds of stuff. So these upper Midwestern bands during that time were just super eclectic bar bands, really, is what they were. And Goose Island Ramblers is no different. They play all kinds of different stuff, but really what they're known for is just their funny stage presence. It's like they could not go through a song without making about 4 jokes during the song. It's just it's what they do. So anyways, that's the Goose Island Ramblers and Bruce Bolerud.
Yeah. So Teresa did say yes, the Twin Cities Hardanger Fiddle Group does play that. And I think Madeline, did you have a question again, Madeline? Did you have another one? Nope. Okay. All right.
I was just gonna, it seems to me like a lot of things we play in old time or round tunes, and this one sounded, the B part particularly seemed much longer than normal, and I wondered, is there the concept of round or as opposed to crooked tunes in Norwegian music? Am I making any sense?
Yes.
Anyways, Mary Pat, what do you want to say?
I was just going to say there are crooked waltzes. And the crooked waltz is, let's see, it is 7 measures. The B part's 7 measures. And it doesn't resolve to the 8 measures till you finish it, and you kind of add that little tag. So yes, there are. I know there's crooked waltzes. I don't know if there's other kind of crooked tunes. Mike, you would know that better than me.
Mostly, like when I think of crooked tunes, I think of some northwestern Minnesota tunes that come across the border from the Native Americans, because the Native Americans in Canada, the Métis people, I'm forgetting how you pronounce it exactly right now, but Métis people, they who play in Canada, and they also float down into Montana and North Dakota, and used to be in Minnesota, although they're not there. They're not playing fiddle there anymore. They all play crooked tunes. They play crooked reels. Almost all their material is somehow like Canadian tunes, but they're crooked in their own special way. And that's one of the signatures of those tunes. Otherwise, not so much. And that tune is straight. It does sound a little funny, but it actually is 8 measures, 8 measures, 8 measures in the tune we just played. But I hear you that it does sound like it's a little goofy. Okay, any other questions before we move on here? yeah, so if you go to my other tune book, besides this one, the Stoltman tune book that is online, which is all tunes from the northwestern Minnesota, Mr. Stoltman, especially Walter Stoltman, the older Stoltman who's dead, is his favorite fiddling buddy was Manitoba's greatest fiddler, Andy DeJarlis, and so he learned a lot of these cricket tunes from Andy. They would go across the border and play with each other. So that's mostly what I'm thinking of when I think of Minnesota cricket tunes is up there. So, and then of course there's my buddy coming up here. Not my buddy, he's dead, but Storveen, Alfred Storveen. And Alfred Storveen, who we'll get to later, is a real character. But his tunes are decidedly crooked. Sometimes, like in Appalachia, I wonder if they're crooked because they just don't know how to play, or if they're just purposely crooked, and that's kind of what I wonder about this Storveen character. But I love all of his tunes, just none of them you're like, huh, what, why is he doing that? Like none of them are quite straight. So that's coming up though. And first we're going to have Selmer Halverson's Waltz, and I don't know how much is included in your packet, but if you have the whole sheet there, you'll see this great story from Leonard about how Selmer was like one of Leonard's favorite fiddlers. He won all the contests in central Wisconsin, and he cleaned up. But from what I gather from a few different stories on a few different tapes, Selmer didn't really have the time of day for Leonard. Like really, like he kept his music close, and he kind of reminds me of some like Texas style contest fiddlers, where like you don't want your secrets to get out and all this stuff. Everything that's like kind of opposite of what we do here, like, sharing music, with the masses and stuff. He kept it close to the vest, and he wanted to have his good concert tunes. So anyways, Leonard tells the story, and with no shame, he just says, yep, I brought my friend, this younger woman, and I don't even remember. She didn't have a name in the story, but he said, yep, we disguised the recording device in her bag because we knew Selmer wouldn't check her bag, even though I guess he does like make sure you don't have a recording device on you. So they went over there, and he shamelessly says that they recorded him. That was the only way he was doing it, because Leonard always tries to get a tune from every fiddler that he knew. He would go visit people. He went and visited people up in northwestern Minnesota, only just to share tunes and get tunes from them. And he liked to say that he liked to play a tune from every fiddler that he ever met up here. And he couldn't get one out of Selmer Halverson unless he wanted to listen to one at a contest or whatever. So he had this woman sneak in this recording device, and that's how he got this song here. And he didn't want to play it at a contest. He just wanted to have it in his repertoire. So here's a Selmer Halverson tune for you that we never would have heard if it wasn't for Leonard Finstad slipping in the recording device. So yeah, Rachel is our fiddler in the front there, and she leads us through the tunes. It frees me up to do whatever the heck I'm doing, and it's really great that people have taken on roles in our group. And one of her roles to start the tunes and lead us through the tunes. And I noticed that in that tune there, she couldn't help going off into some harmony, even though she was leading the tune. She's like, I just want to play some harmony on this. So that's kind of what we do. Next tune is A19, which is this character that I was talking about, Alfred Storveen. And I heard a tape that Leonard had recorded, and this is French Creek, Wisconsin, which is kind of just down the road from Drammen Township, from the place I was talking about earlier. And this guy lived at French Creek, and he there was this tape, and I was just enamored with this tape. I'm like, whoa, this is so different than all the rest of this stuff. It was like wild, out of time, like we were talking about, not set to a certain time, didn't sound like anything, didn't even sound like Scandinavian or anything, but definitely didn't sound like Appalachian. It's just weird tape. You can still listen to it if you look at Alfred Storveen. So then I got really interested in this character, right? So I went out looking for his family and looking for, if we could find any more old music or whatever. And I even went to French Creek, is right by Ettrick. Ettrick is the bigger town, Ettrick, Wisconsin. And I actually went to Ettrick, and the first person I met was a buddy of Alfred, a lifelong buddy, he said, of Alfred Storveen. And I was like, yeah, I'm looking for, he was playing. I mean, it's crazy. Like, I'm going out to rural Wisconsin. I open up the car door, and the first thing I hear is a Norwegian Schottish, a Norwegian American Schottish being played. Like, where do you hear this ever in America? But here it is out of this dude's tape player. So I walked up to him. He was in this little like booth. I don't know what his job was, but he was in this booth playing from this old tape player. And I was like, you're playing this awesome music. Have you ever heard of, I'm looking for this guy named Storveen, Alfred Storveen. He's like, oh yeah, I knew him. He was a good buddy of mine, good buddy. We were good friends. I was like, oh, cool. Like, I'm trying to hunt him down because, I had got this tape of this fiddle, and this dude was like, he played fiddle? I don't think he played fiddle. I would have known if he played fiddle. I was his friend for 40 years. Right. So then it leads me on this wild goose chase through like his family and through his friends. And he was one of these guys who's like the typical like bachelor farmer fiddler, I guess. We have a tape of him, but bachelor farmer guy who's basically lived a solitary life on his home farm the entire time, kind of lived all his life and died on this farm. And this farm had been torn down. I tried to go see it or whatever. It was in the Back 40 area. But his nephew, I could get a hold of he didn't have any kids, I could get a hold of his nephew, whatever. Nobody could confirm that this man fiddled. They're like, oh, my other brother fiddled, Melvin fiddled, and my other uncle fiddled, but we don't think Selmer ever fiddled. But here I have this tape, clearly labeled, Alfred Storveen. So anyways, it's just kind of a funny story. I was probably 20 contacts in before I found a picture of him from his church. Otherwise, there's no record of this man anywhere. It's just like he totally just lived a solitary lifestyle out in this Back 40. So makes him even more, international man of mystery there from Wisconsin. So yeah, we got what tune from him, A19. It's called Storveen Schottische. So now I need to hear the cool little slide. Do, 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 do. But we only let a few people do it because if all of us do it at the same time, oh man, that's kind of doesn't sound quite right. So a few of us do that one. Any more questions for us before we move on here? Are we doing okay? Yeah, nothing else. All right, we'll keep moving on here. We got a lot of tunes here today. Is it fine if we keep going, Mary Pat? Yeah, she says yeah. So okay, this next one is Herbert Erickson's polka. And is this the one, Mary Pat, that you know in a different key, B flat? Is this the one that's B flat?
Yeah, and I'm trying to get the Scandiam people to do it in B flat, and they're kind of like meh. So they might
Yep.
decide they like A better. I love the polka, but hey, I'm cool. If we need to do it in A, I'm fine. But
Yeah.
the transcription we had from Elmo Wick was in B flat. So
Yeah, and
he probably played it in a bunch of keys, and.
Yeah, and I think I heard Elmo himself say on a recording that he was debating with a accordion player about what key his songs would be in, and he just deferred to the accordion player. And all the tapes that I have, that's why when we talked about like fiddling and we talked about like especially bowing and tuning and stuff like that, if you're jumping around from tune to tune, if the accordion says, oh, I want to play this in C, kind of the fiddler's bowing thing kind of goes out the window, because you're not going to have, oh yeah, I play this in A this way and then C this way, So that's where kind of like where like banjos are subservient to fiddles in Appalachian music, fiddlers were subservient to accordions, from everything I gather from all those old tapes. So to make it easier, we put stuff, if it's in B flat, we put it in A. If I really like the tune, I'm like, hey, I'm going to do what these old accordion players do and say, hey, we got to play this in A, just so that we can still have diatonic players playing with us and still have banjo players playing with us. Anyways, this is Herbert Erickson's polka, and he was a Wick family friend, Elmo Wick family friend from Starbuck, Minnesota. So here it is. This is A34. Yeah, and I think that one really sings in cross tuning. Sometime if you're feeling brave and you want to try cross tuning, use the idea of that tab that's on your sheet and try that one up in AEAE, because I think that really sings up there. So moving on, our last tune of the day. I feel like we should just keep going, go through all these. No, I don't have all that recorded. But I mean, 10 tunes, that's pretty good, right? So, Aunt Louise's polka, we're coming up to one of my favorite musicians of all the bunch. Leonard Finseth's my favorite musician for sure. I go visit his grave every once in a while and dust it off and, play him a tune, play him an accordion tune or play him a fiddle tune every once in a while. So he's my favorite, but close up of our dead Minnesota musicians, upper Midwest musicians, is Viola Lee. And our own Dick Reese, who now lives in, I don't know how many of you know Dick Reese, but he now lives up in Duluth, the greatest button bots player. He used to come over to my house every Tuesday when he lived down here in St. Paul, and he would play me button bot songs. And it's just, he's the best. He's one of those dudes, doesn't play out, doesn't play in a band, just, you might find him at a coffee shop when you'd least expect it up in Duluth, Minnesota. I think he has one gig that's like every other month or something like that. Anyways, I have a funny story. I was talking about viola and other fiddlers, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I don't really know about them. Don't really know." And then I listened to her record that Leroy Larson put out, and on there's Dick Reese playing button bots. And I went back to him and I said, "Dick, you're on this record here." He's like, "Oh, yep, I'm on that record, yep." I'm like, "Wait a minute. You said you didn't even know this person a couple months ago." Anyways, I think that's a funny story. He had the privilege just a couple years ago. Viola died at the age of 100 or 99 or something like that. And he got the privilege of playing button bots at her funeral. And the thing about viola that's cool that everybody loved is that she only learned from fiddlers in the area, Bruton, Minnesota, that area, that general area. She only learned from other fiddlers. So everyone just thought that she played like a fiddler. And that's what they loved about her accordion playing, that her grace notes and every approach that she had was the most fiddler-like out of all of them. And plus, she's like one of our only women, legends that we have in our state here of folks who actually, and there's a few other polka ladies who are still around up in northern Minnesota, but as far as the real old timers go, I don't think it was encouraged too much for young women to play their instruments, or at least play with the dudes at dances and stuff like that, which is very unfortunate. And definitely we're correcting that today by having women run organizations that promote this music, and more women than men playing these tunes right now, I would say. So that's a great change of events. But if you want somebody to look up to here, there's Viola Lee from Bruton, Minnesota, doing Aunt Louise's polka, who she learned from her Aunt Louise. So there you go. Cool. I don't think you can have Val Lee song and not have it just be the happiest tune you ever heard. It kind of reminds me of Dwight Lamb and all of his grandfather's Danish tunes. They're just all just so dang happy. So, anyways, that's our last tune here. I'll take any more questions that anybody has. Otherwise, I just wanted to thank everybody for showing up and participating in this music. I know you guys all participating in this music in some kind of way, and I really appreciate you. And thank you for paying attention and listening and playing along.